Couldn't you believe you had to explain to another adult? Story 1. Volunteered in a charity shop. Lady came to the counter with a top and asked if I could look in the back for one of the same color but a larger size. Tried to explain we don't do that because we're a charity shop. She insisted that other shops like HM have done that for her. Wouldn't take no for an answer. Eventually, I just went in the back for a few minutes, made a cup of tea for a coworker, and came out saying we don't have any. She got mad at that too. Story 2. My husband had to explain to a coworker that she couldn't take a train from the US to Europe. She insisted she had to because she didn't like flying. Story 3. I had to explain to my mom that my daughter was growing in my uterus and not my stomach, so the hot sauce on my burrito wasn't going to cause her skin burns. I also explained if she were growing in my stomach would certainly cause way worse burns than hot sauce. It was then that I understood why the school nurse had to explain to me in 5th grade why I kept bleeding through my pants every month at school, and not my mom. Story 4. When I worked at a doctor's clinic, I had a lady on the phone wanting to book an appointment to have her flu shot. She specifically asked it to be a telephone appointment. I could not believe that I had to explain to her that we cannot inject her through the phone. Story 5. That New Zealand, the country we were both born, raised, and living in, is not in Europe. Edit to answer most of your questions. Her reasoning is that when she fills out forms and has to tick a box for her ethnicity, she ticks New Zealand European. She thought that option was there because we are European and therefore in Europe. I had to explain to her that just means she is of European descent, that her ancestors lived in Europe. I also had to explain that not every New Zealander ticks that box, that there are other ethnicities here too. Story 6. I worked tech support for an internet provider a few years back. A woman calls in complaining her Wi-Fi isn't working. Go through the normal troubleshooting questions: what's your device? How are you connected? And finally, what can you see on your screen? Crazy woman: CW, it's black. Me: how do you mean? Are you getting errors? CW: the whole screen is black. Me: have you turned the laptop on? CW: I can't. Me: why not? CW: I've lost the charging cable. Miyoku: do you have another device I can help you connect with? Maybe a tablet or your phone? CW: no. You need to get the laptop reconnected. Me: can you go and buy another charging cable? CW: no. You need to send me one. Me: we don't supply them. Also, we didn't supply you with your laptop. We just provide internet. CW: yes. And now you're not providing me internet, so you need to fix it. 40 mins. This went on, as my team around me stared in incoherent disbelief that this woman couldn't understand why her internet provider couldn't connect Wi-Fi to a computer with now power. I remember hanging up the phone and putting myself on break. My manager looked at me and told me to take a walk, while barely hiding her unrestrained giggles. Story 7. I hope this isn't too racy for this sub. I had to explain to a grown college-educated adult that no does not cause AIDS. That no, if both parties are HIV negative, they cannot create AIDS by engaging in this activity. No, Daniel, that's not how viruses work. Story 8. That driving north meant the whole trip was uphill. I laughed at her until I realized she meant it. Ended up laughing at myself because there's no way I was going to explain it to her. Story 9. When you save a file on Windows, the save window actually lets you save the file into a particular folder. You don't have to go into your recent items to find it and then move it to where you want it to be saved. This person had been working an office job at a computer for more than 5 years at that point. Story 10. I was picking up Italian liras one time, 1999, pre-euros, from a bank in Tennessee. The teller brought me the envelope. When I opened it to count the money, she looked at me with total surprise and asked, "Do other countries have different money?" A bank teller. Story 11. That her power was shut off because she didn't pay her electric bill for 3 straight months, and the letters on neon yellow paper from the power company were sent to warn her of this happening. She thought she was legally entitled to free electricity because it's a requirement for human survival. Edit to add, she wasn't in need. She worked a very well-paying job, and she enjoyed shopping for expensive things. This was not one of those situations where she needed assistance or mercy. She needed a foot lodged firmly in the backside, and the power company put on its boots. Story 12. That raw meat juices, especially that of chicken, should in no way come in contact with other foods. I learned this in 8th grade home ec, so I was 13 years old. I had to explain to a 40-year-old that no, you can't put grilled chicken back on an unwashed cutting board that still has raw chicken juices. Story 13. Used to work at a daycare. One day a little mouse entered the premises and caused an uproar until we caught and released it in the playground. After the whole ordeal, one of my colleagues, who was the dumbest person I've ever met, said, "Let's hope it didn't lay eggs anywhere." I was too stunned to speak and just stared at her, while my room leader friend said, "In the most done with this way mice don't lay eggs, name," and walked off. Edit. I love how so many people in these replies are trying to find a different interpretation of what she must have meant, or say that she must have been joking D, but no. Unfortunately, I have to tell you she was 100 of the opinion that mice lay eggs, because she even doubled down about it later. Story 14. That dogs are artificially bred, and that there aren't wild golden retrievers, wild chihuahuas, and wild Maltese just running about that we're catching to make into pets. Story 15. I had to explain to my two coworkers that it wasn't some magic fairy that was throwing away their coffee cups. They were joking around one day that their old coffee cups always disappeared by the next day, and I had to tell them it was me, and that I had to start doing it, because they kept getting left in the way and being knocked over. I was off for a few days and came back and there were cups everywhere. Story 16. That the Aztecs and Incans are not interchangeable. They were in completely different parts of the Americas, and that neither of them built the Nazca lines. But especially not the Aztecs, who were not in Peru. This person kept trying to tell me it was up to interpretation, like, no, it's not. It's geography. Story 17. I had to explain to a restaurant worker that eggs are not dairy. Chickens do not have mammary glands. Someone who is allergic to dairy can eat eggs and chicken. Mayonnaise, containing eggs and oil, is therefore not dairy. She was looking at me like I was the stupid one the whole time. Story 18. I work and travel. I've had to explain time zones more than you'd believe. So, if you leave Sydney at 2 p.m. and fly 14 hours, crossing the international dateline, you arrive in LA at noon, about 2 hours before you left. I've watched this emoji happen in real time. Story 19. I talked about this before, and will until the end of days, because this man deserves to be shamed. A 23-year-old man who had the right to vote, who had a driving license, who had a job, and could get married and start a family. Thought people were hanging the moon in the sky. Like, the moon, Earth's natural satellite, was being hung on the sky like a painting on a wall? I'm still reeling over that one. This man had gone to school, had a formal education, and was actually going to college. He learned about that in primary school. And the kicker? I was the one to explain it to him because I was his girlfriend at the time. And let me tell you, things unraveled real fast when I started paying attention and saw through the smokescreen. Dude was willfully ignorant and bone-dead stupid on top of it. He was really, really good at hiding it. I dropped him like the mess he was and dived into more and more books to compensate the loss of brain matter I suffered from going out with him. Story 20. I had to explain to someone you can't buy like 2 pounds of lunch meat and eat it for a month. The concept of things spoiling was new to him. To be fair, we were both college students and he was living alone for the first time. I used to work at a coffee shop and had to explain what filling something halfway meant to a woman I was training. She didn't understand the concept of half. Story 21 from a Vet Tech 1. That the ticks on a male dog were actually nipples, and that male dogs have nipples, just like every other mammal. 2. That a rabbit that clearly has visible testicles was a male. 3. That you cannot feed an animal that is strictly a carnivore, a ferret, FYI, a vegan diet, that thing so sick when it came in. 4. That yes, when you have 2 animals, same species of opposite genders in the house, and they aren't spayed-neutered, they will breed. Even if they're mother-son, brother-sister, different ages, different sizes, different breeds, etc., you'd be shocked at how many people didn't think this would happen. Ooh, like, do you understand biology at all? Story 22. A girl was staying with my family and had brought her dog. The dog got hurt at one point, freak accident that required surgery on a back leg and the cone of shame to be worn. At one point, she started cutting off a bit of the cone. Me careful, cut too much, and hell be able to reach his stitches. Her, that's all right. Hell be able to keep them clean. I had to explain to her, very slowly, that the purpose of the cone was to keep him from licking the stitches and pulling them out. She honestly thought the cone was just an aesthetic thing. Story 23. That an item damaged in a car crash did not qualify as a manufacturer defect covered under warranty. The store refund policy was 90 days, and she had a receipt over a year old. Story 24. I had to explain to 2 teenage girls, 15 and 16, that the reason the candle went out was because they put the glass lid back on its jar. One of them said that fire can only be put out with water. I explained that fire needs oxygen, and putting the lid back on it cut the supply. When they didn't understand after explaining a few times, I had to explain it to them like toddlers. Fire is hungry, so it eats the air. When all the air is gone, it goes to sleep. Bye-bye fire. The double O was too much. P.S. The look on their mama's face was so funny. She turned to me, threw her hands up, and said, "I've failed," in the most defeated tone. That poor woman. Edit, I would like to point out that we did, in fact, have a serious talk to these girls about proper fire safety and when to not use water on an open fire. Story 25. When COVID first hit the US and there were no real treatments for it or vaccines or anything, I caught it and got lung clots and had to spend a week in the hospital. Numerous people on the floor I was on died. The guy in the bed next to me had it, and they had him under an oxygen tent. He fought with every single person that came in to check on him, refusing to believe that he had COVID. He thought literally everybody was lying to him about what was wrong with him. He wound up dying about the fourth day I was there. To this day, I hear people make comments that it doesn't exist or never did or whatever dumb thing they have to say about it. I have to turn around and walk away from them or ignore them on whatever platform I'm on to avoid smacking them up beside the head. Story 26. I had to explain to a fully grown adult that yes, your car's keyless entry remote does indeed have a battery in it, just like a TV remote. And yes, the button stopped working because the battery is dead and you need to replace it. I also had to tell him that if you're going to buy huge bags of dry dog food and keep it in your garage, which you leave open most of the time, you might want to actually close the bag and maybe even put the closed bag in a container with a lid instead of letting it sit completely open and then always wondering why the dog food is full of bugs, spoils fast, and attracts rats and raccoons. I wish I could say he was a super brilliant engineer or something, but yeah, no. Story 27. That bocconcini, parmesan, and feta are dairy cheeses. I used to work in a pizzeria and had to explain to this vegan couple on multiple occasions that these cheeses all were made from dairy. It got to the point I had to grab the original containers and read the ingredients on the third, try to get it to sink in. Story 28. I had to explain to a friend of mine who had grown up with me that no, you cannot vote for Trump in the Australian election. He is not a candidate for anything here. Story 29. Her child. My child's half-sibling could not have inherited a trait from my child because that trait was inherited from me. But they're brothers. Story 30. I had to explain to a doctor's receptionist from Michigan once that Canada was not located somewhere mysteriously across the ocean, but rather across the border. From Michigan. My mom and I spent the car ride home in stunned silence. Story 31. How a shower curtain works. I kept finding the bathroom floor absolutely soaked after my roommate showered. I gently asked her to make sure the shower curtain was fully closed. Keeps happening. Finally, I figure out she's been drawing it closed with the bottom fully outside the tub. Okay. Sigh. So I draw her a diagram showing how if you put the bottom of the curtain inside the tub, then the water routes back into the tub rather than on the floor. She was like, oh, you and your science. Then next time she comes out wrapped in a towel. Which way does the curtain go again? We were both graduate students in science PhD programs. Story 32. That the sun was a star. No, it isn't a sun. I learned that when I was like 6. Birthdays. I work in IT, and when we have new employees start, their default password is their birthday using the 2-digit month, day, and year format. I cannot tell you how many adults get confused about this. I often have to explain that January is 01, February is 02, etc. Just yesterday, I had a 40-something start counting on her fingers trying to figure out what October was before typing in the wrong password 3 times. I finally just had to do it for her. This was not an isolated incident. I'd say it happens with at least a third of new employees, all adults. Story 33. That I could not steal a button from her Viber app. I work at the printing shop and old people often come and give me their phone to send stuff on email or Viber or WhatsApp and print them. So one day, an old lady 70YO comes with her husband to print some documents. So I turn on the Wi-Fi, connect it, and send the PDF document on Viber. I printed it and said, bye. The next day, she comes to my shop furious that I stole her direct photo send button on Viber. What happened? The app updated, and the button is moved to another place. I explained it, but she couldn't believe me. She's convinced I stole the button and wants me to give it back. She was arguing with me for approximately half an hour until her husband asked her to drop it. She never came back. Story 34. She said, you saw 911. You saw the planes hit the Twin Towers? You saw it with your own eyes? Yes, along with a dozen other people on the roof of my building. I don't think she believed me. Story 35. A local manager once invited themselves to a team building event I was holding for a group near their location. Problem was that I had to explain to them why a 51st person could not come to the dinner at a place with a strict 50-seater capacity. The restaurant in question was the Witchery in Edinburgh, and it was quite in demand at the time, so the manager really wanted to go. They actually used the phrase, "Do you know who I am?" at me when I kept pushing about who had invited them, because we both knew that no one had invited them, and I kept playing dumb and pushing. I had to bite my tongue when they asked if I knew who they were. Any number of comedy replies went through my head, and I quickly had to barge past them all and pick something less unemployment-worthy. Story 36. I work in retail. Had just rang up a customer for a pair of shoes. Total came to 97.19. He gave me a 100 bill. I gave him his change receipt. His wife comes in later to return them. I give her the 97.19. She goes, "No, my husband gave you a $100 bill. I want the 100 back." I said he did, but his total was only 97.19. So I gave him change back. She persists. She wants her $100 back. I said, "Mom, your husband only paid $97.19, so that is what you get back when you return the item." This woman, "He gave you $100. I want the $100 back." This wasn't some sort of quick change scam. This woman was just dumb as a box of rocks. I told her, "If you'd like to give me the 281 in change I gave him, I'd be happy to give you a $100 bill." She kept arguing with me for a minute, long enough for other people in line to speak up, tell her how stupid she was. LaMayo eventually gave up, left with her. 97.19. Story 37. That the Venus flytrap wasn't an alien species that landed on Earth carried by a meteorite. It took several minutes of conversation to convince them that this was not true. Story 38. There was an old woman who we shared an alley with when I was a kid, and she had several cats. She used to talk to them constantly, like in a normal conversational way. While this is very cute, I had questions. I said, "Why do you talk to your cats so much?" I was like 6 years old, and she said, "Cats understand every word we say, they just can't talk." I said that was not true, and she sat in her lawn chair, looked at one of them, and calmly said, "Butter, come sit with me, and I'll be damned if that cat didn't walk right over and sit on her lap." So I guess that was the day that the old woman across the alley had to explain to me that cats understand everything, they just can't talk. Story 39. One time at school, I'm a teacher, the electric went out completely. We were organizing for the kids to be picked up, and messages were being sent around by staff running here, there, and everywhere. One teacher asked me why they couldn't just send emails around. I said the electric was off. She said, "Yeah, we can get our emails on phones." I said, "Yeah, but the email servers are downstairs and the electric is off." She said, "Yeah, but our phones are working." I said, "But the servers aren't." She threw her hands up and walked off saying, "I didn't understand." Story 40. This person was told as a child that they have locked their chickens away when it rains. Otherwise, they will open and lift their beaks up and drown. I laughed harder when I realized that she still believed it. Story 41. That you don't have to use the exact computer you sent the email from to view your emails. You can log in from any device and access them. This was to my boss. Story 42. The difference between the number 0 and the letter O when giving them a temporary password so they could get back into their account. The only thing I could think of was, well, one is a letter and one is a number, and it still didn't click for them? Story 43. My cat lost one of her legs, and a year or two later had a litter of kittens, one born with 3 legs. My sister thought the kitten inherited 3 legs from the mama, whose leg was amputated. Story 44. A Coinstar machine. I was working at a grocery store at the time, and one was at the front of the store. Walking by, I saw a woman struggling and asked if she needed help. She said that she accidentally hit the Spanish instead of English button on the start screen. I started to walk her through the directions to use it, feed your coins into the hopper, and it will count and sort them, and at the end, take your receipt to customer service and get your cash. She was very annoyed with me at this point and exclaimed, "But I don't want Spanish money." Sigh. Story 45. My brother's GF a long time ago. I knew her for years. When the conversation happened, she started talking about a problem at work. She didn't understand the numbers on the air conditioning unit. Apparently, she never saw a weather forecast in her life. At least never paid attention to any, and she couldn't associate a temperature number with how hot or cold it is. She was around 25 or older. Story 46. I tried to explain that it was not the fault of the Jewish people that the Holocaust happened, and they didn't bring it upon themselves by existing. It didn't work, and he got angry because he is an anti-Semite. But at least I tried. Story 47. Basic human decency. That hitting and yelling was not okay during a disagreement. That breaking things isn't a healthy way to get anger out. What domestic abuse is? That you can most definitely be an alcoholic and not live in a cardboard box on the side of the road. That watching multiple times a day, including at work, probably means he has an addiction. I could go on and on. Oh, and this is all the same person. My husband. I wish someone had explained to me what a narcissist was when I was in my early 20s, and that he knew all of this and was playing dumb so he could further manipulate me. Story 48. I had to explain to a university classmate in an art class that red paint and white paint mixed together made pink paint. I thought she was joking when she asked me how I made the pink paint I was using. Story 49. I worked at a pet store and had a young college student come in and ask to see the mice. We had a few fancy mice, bigger ears, different colors, so I showed them to her. She ultimately decided on a cream-colored little buddy and also picked out a cute little plastic ball for the guy to run around in. As I was getting prepped to scoop the mouse into a take-home box, I asked her if she had had mice as pets before, or if this was her first. I had mice as pets growing up and am more used to seeing people pick out hamsters or gerbils when they want a tiny pet. So I was always pretty jazzed when I saw a mouse go home to a nice person. This was when she let me know that she was getting the mouse as a gift for her friend. So I'm just going through the motions, getting the mouse boxed, and reply, "That's pretty cool. She must really like mice. Does she have many?" "Oh no, she doesn't have any. This is going to be a surprise." "Oh well, does she have a cage or empty aquarium from another pet?" "Nah, that's why I'm getting her this too." At which point she holds up the plastic runaround ball she'd picked out. I had to gently inform her that the mouse couldn't live in the ball, that it would need a cage in order to live a happy and healthy life. She really thought the ball would be totally fine as the home for little guy. After talking through the logistics and cost of getting a starter kit, which was tallying higher than she was hoping to spend, I ultimately talked her out of the mouse. I gently suggested a bed of fish, and she was very excited when she saw them all. I got her a small 1-gallon tank that came with a filter, food, some gravel, and a small light all included for a much more affordable price, and she chose a fish that was her friend's favorite color. Story 50. When I was in the military, we had a new airman who I had to counsel on why it is important to shower, wear deodorant, wash your clothes, etc. We didn't work in the field, or on the flight line where it may have been more acceptable to be stinky. We worked in the medical group, in patient care, and patients were complaining about his foul odor. Backstory: apparently, his mother took care of his laundry his whole life and would remind him to bathe. And since he was on his own now, he just hadn't really thought about it. Story 51. I work in a long-term stay hotel. We get a lot of military and work crews staying there. There have been quite a few men in their 50s that have come to ask me how to use the washing machines. They're not complicated or anything. There's like 4 options: cycle type, water temp, soil level, load water amount, a start button, and the spot to put the detergent. Usually their excuse is their wife has always done it for them. I also had to have a talk with a manager once who was messing up payroll. When submitting people's times, if they worked for 7 hours and 7:30, shed input 7. 3 hours rather than 7. 5. Work 45 minutes of an hour? You guessed it, 45 instead of 75. I tried to explain it to her twice, but she couldn't get it, and I eventually had to reach out to the area manager to let him know what she was doing. Edit spelling. Story 52. I was on the Peak tram in Hong Kong, and a group of US students were riding with us. They asked me and my friends where we were from cause of our accents. We said South Africa. They said, "Where's that?" "My guys, it's one of the only countries in the world where the directions are baked into the name. How do you not know what South or Africa mean?" I'm not often rendered speechless, but that is one of those occasions. Story 53. That I can't have a conversation with you or take your request whilst I'm in the middle of a song on stage. Seriously, I have speakers all around me. They are loud. I am concentrating on my performance and making a connection with people in the room. I can't understand anything you are screeching at me, and no, yelling it louder is not the solution. If you have a request for the musician, wait until the set break, then ask them. Also, ask for one song. If they don't know it, you can ask for a different one, but if they don't know that either, then just thank them for their time. We're not jukeboxes. And if you don't like what we're playing, keep it to yourself. You chose to come to our gig. We didn't come to your living room. Story 54. That the answer to the job knowledge quiz was literally in the material they give you with the quiz. The whole team on days we have to re-up our quizzes. Asks Corkscrew Fork, "What's the answer to this one?" And when I show them where to find it, they get mad and go ask someone else. Honorable mention to having to explain repeatedly how to round up down a number when we're doing inventory and the system won't take the decimal. I can at least tell myself that they probably haven't thought about math since they left school. Story 55. Taxes. You have to pay taxes on the items you purchase. No, I cannot just make the tax go away. No, I cannot include the tax in the price. And no, I'm not going to call someone to make it happen. Jewelry retail, in a state that very much pays taxes on near everything. Story 56. Having someone tell me the football game I'm watching is not live because it's dark here, and Florida, while in California there is still daylight. Time zones baffled them. Story 57. My brother, who is 13 years older than me, thought meant someone who never finishes their project's tasks. I had to explain to him the actual definition. Story 58. While working at a Via Ferrata, that no, she couldn't do it in sandals, and that no, I wouldn't give her my own shoes as I need shoes to work on the Via Ferrata. And I had to explain to a man that leaving his 8-year-old son alone on the top of the mountain because the son was scared to do the 7 zip lines, 500 meters long each to go down after the Via Ferrata was not okay. The dude wanted to have fun with his friend. I found the boy alone walking near a ravine outside the trail, a 3A but easy trail people can use to walk down if they don't want to do the zip lines. Story 59. I will preface this by saying that, yes, the American healthcare system is a nightmare, but not this much of a nightmare. I am American and studied abroad for a semester in Italy during college. A French classmate of mine happened to learn in casual conversation that I had had a few surgeries as a child. He was absolutely dumbfounded by this and demanded to know how I could afford to study abroad if I had surgery in America. I explained health insurance to him, and he said, "No, that's not how it works. You should be homeless if you've had surgery." I explained health insurance again and pointed out that carrying it was actually a legal requirement. Are your parents billionaires or something? I extended the olive branch of explaining that after one surgery, there was an insurance error, and my parents almost did have to pay almost $500,000. Only $500,000? No, you're lying. Surgery costs millions of dollars in the US and you have to pay it all personally. I eventually gave up and let him think that my parents were secretly billionaires. Story 60. My grandpa asked where South Korea was when I told him my sister was doing a study abroad. Easy. Asia. Gee, I've never been to Asia. Me, grandpa, you fought in Vietnam. Gee. So? Me, sir, that's in Asia. Gee, really? I guess I have been to Asia. Story 61. How to read. I've taught like 4 adults how to read. It's crazy. I'm in my 40s. I shouldn't have to do this anymore. I can't get over the fact they got to adulthood and couldn't read. It's crazy how bad our education system is. America sucks if you're not rich. Story 62. That the smell in your dish sponge and dish rags is because of bacteria, and that you need to wash them, and that they in fact don't clean themselves because you're using them with dish soap. Story 63. I had cancer in 2011. I'm fine now, and I shave my head regularly. One of my colleagues last week said that I must be sad to have no hair because I had cancer. I had to explain to her that my hair grew back. Look, I have eyebrows and there is hair on my arms. But I choose to shave my head because I look better that way. Story 64. One lovely day, I commented to the ex aloud how the clouds looked as they flowed up and down through the contours of a river valley as they floated by. She was mind blown, and when she told me what was astonishing to her, so was I. She thought clouds didn't move, as in they were fixed in place. She was in her 40s at that point. I had nothing to say to her about that. Story 65. When using yogurt to fight a yeast infection, the yogurt goes in your mouth. You eat it. You do not insert it elsewhere, and you certainly don't ask your coworkers to monitor your hindquarters or office chairs for leaks or squishiness while on shift. At a bank, as a manager. Edit inside or out, whatever end, strawberry Go-Gurt will only make the situation worse. We were told at morning staff meeting about the issue, asked to watch her back by checking chairs for moisture with the back of our hands, and shown the empty tube, which was strawberry. None of these things are good. Story 66. That certain newspapers are biased towards certain political parties. They don't all have to be non-biased. She just believed everything from the Daily Mail was 100 true with no spin. No wonder she's a racist. Story 67. That men and women have the same number of ribs. They were convinced that all men have one less rib than women because God took Adam's rib to make Eve. Edit. They were shown pictures of skeleton diagrams to prove that this was false, and doubled down with no, I don't believe that. Story 68. I had to tell a group of 18 to 20-year-old British kids how to eat corn on the cob. A tour guide bought some for everyone, and these 5 were completely flabbergasted about how to eat the corn while it was still on the plant. Story 69. That Spaniards were European. My mom is racist, and we had a discussion when I told her her hate for the Spanish language is weird, since it's technically a colonizer's language like English is. She got confused, and I pointed out Spaniards are Europeans and thus generally white people. She snidely said, well, that's your opinion. Oh, I had my laptop, and she is technologically inept, so I Google imaged Spain, people, and then covered up the search bar. I called her over. Me. Hey, Mom, would you say these people look like us? Mom. Yeah, of course. Me, would you say they are white? Mom. Yes, I would. I showed her the search bar, asked her to tell me what it said. She was so annoyed with me for that. My husband, then boyfriend, was just watching us go back and forth like it was a tennis match. Story 70. To my eldest father, he was convinced his landlord was paying $5,000 a month for his bills. He showed me a bill. I then had to tell him that his landlord isn't paying his bill and he actually owes the energy company $5,000. Story 71. NYC's crime rate. A middle-aged woman born circa 1970, for context, am an early 80s baby, complained that the city has gotten dangerous lately, to the point that she no longer feels safe on the subway like she did when she was younger, in the early 90s. The early 90s, when the city's murder rate was 6 times higher than now, and the rates of all kinds of other crimes was at least double. Story 72. Went to a trade show recently. We had a bunch of small but nice giveaways, and some pricier ones for interesting people and potential customers. A few hours in, we had to put the expensive things away because grown people would stand around arguing why they should be allowed to just grab a 50 item off the table. Story 73. That the Earth was bigger than the moon. Long story short, this was the beginning of the end of our marriage. He and I had an argument in front of the kids the entire 5-hour drive. He was telling the kids how stupid I was to correct Daddy. OMFG. Story 74. I had to explain to my friend that when she feeds her dog breakfast, and then he goes number 2 a few minutes later that he didn't just out the food he just ate. He pooped out the food that he ate from the day before.